Hey everyone, it's Heather and Jenny with Surviving Darkness, and we are on episode 9. So after going back and listening to some of the older episodes that we've had, or other episodes, even I guess not just the older ones because I included last week, we found some topics that we kind of wanted to talk about a little bit more, kind of expand on that go along with the things that happened, of course, but then affect us now in everyday lives and even in our relationships with our husbands and just things like that. So just thought that we'd kind of talk about that this week. So one of them is like Heather had said last week, us not being able, during that time when everything was going on, we weren't really able to express our emotions at that time, so it was, she had said, and it was, if you cried or if you, acted like you were upset, then we were told that it would give more power to this thing. And we didn't want to do anything that would give more power to this entity, because we're already tortured enough. We didn't want to do anything like that. So, but it also kept us from expressing ourselves and crying or being upset or anything like that. And so I think even now, sometimes I hold things in a lot until I get to the point that I just snap or, reach my breaking point. Because that's just how, we just put everything kind of in the back of our mind during that time, or, weren't really able to talk about it. Like we said, we weren't able to talk about anything with each other. And then if we said, or if we acted like we were upset, then of course, like I said, it was, this thing would get more power. But then I also feel like it would kind of give Dad like a guilty conscience, to see us being that upset too. I don't know exactly what it is, but I just feel like there was a little more to it than just not feeding into the power of this thing.
And it was, to me, it made me feel just a little sick because it was like you had to fake like you enjoyed stuff.
Yeah.
And you weren't enjoying anything at all. No. But it was like, just act like you like it so that it doesn't, one, get any power, and two, it weakens it. Everything was about, if you do this or do that, it's just going to make it weaker. Mm-hmm.
So and nothing you did, even if you did absolutely everything that you were supposed to, it never seemed to make it any better.
Everything was micromanaged, down to every little detail. Even I'm probably going to skip ahead, but we would have to, like I had said before, have the tape recorder going during these acts.
This one this week might be a little more graphic.
Right.
I'm a little more detailed about things too, because, we covered topics before, but now I guess we're going to delve into them a little bit deeper. So that's just kind of to let you all know about this week too.
Right. So the tape, it had to sound like we were enjoying what was going on, even though we didn't. And it was like, why did you do this? Why did you do that? It was just almost like they were directed and cut because, you messed up on this part.
Mm-hmm. And next time you need to do it a little differently. Or this needs to be positioned at this certain spot in order for you to be able to hear, or us to be able to hear whatever, So, and now looking back on that, it's like, to me, that wasn't for this entity. That entity was there in the room. If something was going on, it didn't need to have a tape that was recorded to hear anything, because it would have known, and it would have been able to have it however it remembers things, it just would have fed off of that.
Oh, but no, that is where Dad got the information, because that thing told him that we needed to do this, or we needed to do that. Next time, do it like this.
Yes.
And next time, put it like that. Put the recorder like this, and be sure to hit play or play and record at the same time, like just at the perfect time. It was like, not only were we being abused, but it was being recorded, which was an extra humiliation. Then you have to act like you're enjoying it, which is another added humiliation.
And this isn't anything that we would do now. You know what I mean? Like, I would not. Some people do. But there's no way in this world that I would record myself, video myself in any type of situation like that. And, I definitely wouldn't audio tape myself, or however you want to say it, record anything like that. That's just not something that we would do now. And when you're forced to do that in those situations, when you're having to do things with people that you have no interest in, and it's sickening to have to be with them anyway. And then this trauma on top of it, with, like you say, having to turn your head a certain way, or, make sure, like you say, that this is exactly where it needed to be positioned, or that you were making these exact sounds and things like that. And, just looking back on those things, and it's just, even right now, like my stomach is just so sick, just upset to think back about that things. But we want to talk about this stuff.
But it's like, I think the hardest part about it is, not only do you know that this is being recorded, but you know that it's going to be critiqued. You know that you're going to be put down because you didn't do this right, or you didn't do that right. And you know that it's being used to blackmail you also.
Yes.
So that was the added, I'm making for you something that you can use against me.
Yeah.
Because I have no choice.
And that's how it was with, like, pictures. We talked about, they were Polaroid pictures.
Right.
So they were instantly developed. You didn't have to, you could not, you wouldn't have been able to take pictures like that anywhere then and get them developed. And so it was Polaroid pictures that were taken. And so we talk about this now. We don't know what happened to those pictures or these cassettes, or where they are, what happened to them. We have no idea. If they're still in existence, if they ended up being thrown away, if somebody has them. So
we don't know.
No.
At all where any of them.
And when you're taking pictures in explicit positions and told exactly what you have to do and things like that, it's just, it's so hard to describe those feelings even now, as to,
you sort of had to in your mind think that you were somebody else in order to even be able to do it. It's like, because that was so not us.
No. And it was still survival.
It was.
That's what we thought. We were doing what we had to do in order to, well, in my mind, to not be tortured, but we were still tortured every day, but doing what we were supposed to do to try to help fight whatever this was. But it was awful to do, to have to go through this stuff. And to think about who saw them.
Right.
Who saw these pictures? Who heard this stuff? Because we don't know that. We have no idea.
Yeah, we don't know where they went, what they were actually used for.
No.
We know that they were used against us. That, they wasn't going to let everybody in the community know what we were doing and all this. But, I mean, we were young and we were doing out of fear what we were told we had to do. But we weren't at the age nor in the mindset with all the fighting for our lives that we were doing to realize that by exposing those, they are exposing themselves too.
That never even
that didn't
crossed your mind, because it was well, everybody's going to know what you're doing, you know, and what we're doing.
Yes.
Exactly. And, you know, it's like you said, it was so embarrassing to us to think about anything like that because we were nothing like that. And that was the last thing we wanted people to know was what was going on, and for any type of our reputation to be tarnished by something that we really didn't have control over.
And you say that, you say our reputation tarnished and all this. There was so much put on us to be the best at everything outside the home. Like, be in the honor societies, graduate with honors, go to college, play softball, be the best at this, be the best at that. That the thought of it being found out outside the home, it would be devastating for us.
Yeah. Yes.
It was almost like we had to overachieve outside the home so that what was going on inside the home was never even recognized or no one would have ever thought that.
Right. Yes.
So it was one extreme to the other. It was total chaos and total craziness and fear and all this other stuff in the home. But outside the home, we had to be perfectly normal.
Yeah, and that's how it was with the softball coaching, you know, because he coached you, he coached me. And, you know, people that played with us loved our dad. And, you know, but it was never anything like that there. It was just a dad being a coach, you know, and that's how it was.
But they also did get onto him because of how hard he was on us, because we had to be great. Like, I played shortstop. I was not to let a ball go past second base, which is on the opposite side of the field for me. Couldn't let one go past third base. I had to catch the ones that were in the outfield. So it was like, if there was a ball hit anywhere on the left side of the field or over second base or to the other side of the second base, that was my ball. It was like everything was mine. I was to not let anything by at all.
Right.
Which, I mean, it was good as far as being recognized as like a good ball player.
Right.
But it was like we had standards that were way higher for us than what it was anybody else. All that he wanted to hear was, oh, your daughter's doing so great over there, or your daughter's such a good player, or don't hit the ball to the coach's daughter.
Yeah.
Don't hit it on that side of the field, because it was an ego boost. And the more we overachieved on the outside of the home, the less you had to worry about what they wondered what was going on inside the home. Because they were too busy talking about all this good stuff out here.
Yes.
But let's don't let anyone know that there's any bad stuff over there.
And even now, you brought up softball. I was just thinking about this the other day. Dad did help with getting the softball team started for the high school, the girls softball team there. And so that was a big deal. They did not have one at that time, and that was a big deal for him to put, you know, him and several other people to push that along to make that happen. And so then they were kind of renaming some of the fields at the city park. And, you know, I know I had at least one person say, you know, you would think they would have named one after your dad. And I was just like, yeah, maybe. But it's hard to say, no. You know, that probably shouldn't have happened. You know, I'm okay with it not happening. That's all right. You know, because they don't know what we went through. They don't know that person.
They just, they knew the public person.
Yes.
They didn't know the private person.
Yes. And like we said, there were changes made later in his life, but we're not talking about later in his life when we're talking about this stuff. You know, we're talking about
like
right in the midst of everything.
Our kids and the grandkids didn't know the person that we knew.
Yes.
So yes, there was changes. And it could have been fear on his part. because we had sort of turned it around on him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think my oldest was maybe 4 or 5 when you told me that things had happened with you. Because up until I was married and had a kid, possibly both kids, I did not know that things had happened with you.
It was 2008 was the summer that it happened, because I was in Florida when everything came out, because it was earlier that year. And then when you finally confronted Dad, I was in Florida and I'd had the back surgery. And so that was 2008 is when that happened.
Okay.
So either earlier in the year, like February or something, is when the other family member got in trouble and things started coming out. And then I kind of told you then, and then something else happened.
Well, I remember the shock of it, because it seemed out of nowhere that I was sitting at the computer and you just was like, there's something I want to tell you. And I was listening, but I was still looking at the computer. And I remember you saying the things that happened to you happened to me too. And it was almost as if I'd been stabbed or something. I couldn't catch my breath. And I just kept looking at the computer screen, trying to comprehend what you were getting at. And I remember just sitting there for a few seconds. I mean, it seemed like an eternity before I could actually turn around and be like, are you serious? Because all those years I was told all I was doing was to keep you from having to go through this stuff. And I remember like trying to comprehend the anger that came over me. And the thought that it's a good thing he's not here right now.
Right at this moment, yes.
Because I had a little bit of time to cool down before I saw him. And I was just like, I would have done something that would have put me in prison, put me in jail, because I was that angry. It was like all those things that I had thought I was protecting you from, just it all just slapped me right in the face. Everything was lies. And I guess maybe that's when I really realized that everything was lies.
Yeah, and it was.
It was just lies, manipulation.
And to think about, too, the way that we were so controlled, and that, like you just said, the word is manipulated in our thinking. I have said that there was one time, and I don't remember when it was, but things were already happening with me, that I had walked in the living room because I had a really bad leg cramp. And the way that Dad reacted, it clicked in my head that the same things were going on with you that were going on with me. But I never said anything about it to you, never said anything about it to anybody, because it was, you can't talk about it. And it's weird because looking back on it now, I should have said something to you then. And, this is another thing that we talk about. If it was meant to come out before, it would have. But at the same time, it was like, well, no, we still can't talk about this stuff. I can't come to you and say, listen, I know what's going on with you, or I have a feeling that I know what's going on with you. There wasn't anything going on at that moment, but it was his reaction to me coming in that room when I was not supposed to be in there. And I knew then, I was like, okay, there's something else going on because of that reaction. And so anyway, it just kind of lets me know how brainwashed, I guess you'd say, in a way that we were, into being like, well, that's probably going on with her, but you know what? I don't think that's my problem right now. And I'm not saying that's what I thought. I'm just saying that, I didn't know how to react to it and what to say at that point.
And he fed a lot of the animosity. Like when I would be aggravated, like you being in your room and having your door shut, and I couldn't understand why you acted like you were so depressed when you weren't going through anything. And if I would verbalize that, he would feed into it. Yeah, I don't know. She just in one of them moods all the time. She just is just hateful and wants to be by herself all the time. And he would say that kind of stuff to feed whatever we were feeling.
Yeah.
Like if I was feeling like aggravated with you,
Mm-hmm.
he fed it.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
He didn't.
At all.
It wasn't like, well, I don't know what's going on. You know, I hate that she's sad all the time and that she's staying in her room. It was, yeah, she gets everything she wants. She's got everything she needs. I don't know why she wants to act like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fed into to keep us from talking to each other, because I resented the fact that I was going through all I was going through every night to protect you, and you were in there acting like a spoiled brat.
Yes.
And that's how I perceived it, because I didn't know you were going through that.
Right.
So when you told me that you were going through the same thing, I think that's what made me so mad,
Mm-hmm.
because I could have protected you better if I would have known, or I thought I could have protected you better, because I
Right.
thought I was already protecting you.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't having to deal with all this stuff because I was taking it all.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
like you said, that's how he kept everything going, you know, and that's how Satan does. He manipulates every situation to where it's going to be his benefit.
I mean,
you know?
it might sound quite, I don't know, I don't want to say gruesome, but I literally wanted to take his heart out at that point.
I believe that.
I mean, I felt like mine had been ripped out.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I thought and I knew was not that at all.
Yeah.
All that I had went through to keep you safe, I wasn't keeping you safe at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like my soul, my heart, everything was ripped out at that
Because
second.
of everything that you had known as a truth for that many years was nowhere near the truth
Right.
at all, you know.
And I scared myself when I thought about how, after the fact, how angry I was. If he was there that day, I don't know that he would have taken another breath after
Right.
that day.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is how mad I was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I could have even controlled it, because I was that angry.
Right. Yeah. I know, like, your reaction was, it almost looked like you were going to pass out when I first told you. It was like everything had just drained out of you when I told you. And I knew you had no idea. I just knew that. And like I said, when everything started coming out and talking about other things, then it was like, okay, this is finally the time for us to start talking about the things that we've gone through, you know?
It was a punch in the gut. It was like, I felt like I couldn't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, the rug was pulled out from underneath me.
Yes.
I didn't know how to react. I was overcome with so many emotions at one time. I felt like I could just have mentally broke right then.
Right.
And I know that I wouldn't have been able to control.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because of the anger and all the years worth of
It was like it was
lies
all
and
going to
everything.
flood out. And it's just a good thing that it was a couple of days that I had a little bit of time to get a grip on it before I confronted him. And I told him those exact words. It's a good thing you was not here
Mm-hmm.
when Jenny told me, or you would not be alive today.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the look on his face was pure shock.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure. I have no doubt about that. Yeah, because we never would have said anything like that. We never would have stood up like that when we were home, when we lived there.
I don't think when we started flipping the script, he knew how to handle
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
When he no longer had the control of us, he didn't know how to handle that.
And speaking of that, you know, we had gone to Heather's church last night and talked about our podcast and the things that we had gone through. And after that, I talked to Mom, and I'm not going to talk a lot about her because, you know, she's still, I guess, processing things and everything. But I guess we didn't think about how we knew how controlled we were with everything. But it feels like her manipulations and her control was even more fine-tuned, I guess you'd say, to where her mind, even now, is just still can't process some of the things that happen. And I'm sure we can't either, but I'm just saying it's just different. You can tell that the trauma that she went through was extreme.
Right.
Very extreme.
And we keep telling her, but it's hard for her to overcome the guilt.
Yeah.
She was the mom. She should have been protecting us. She should have noticed these things. Not saying that I'm thinking that, but in her mind,
yes.
In her mind, she's thinking, I should have protected my girls. I should have known what was going on. I should have seen what was going on. I should have stopped what was going on. And I didn't. But we're saying the whole family, like all three of us, were isolated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. We weren't allowed to talk to each other. So she didn't know what was going on.
And she feels even now like, well, people know what's going on now, and they're going to look at me and be like, well, you should have done something. You should have known this was going on in your house. And, you know, there was one point when she kind of maybe thought there was something going on, but then Dad came in with all these, well, you're crazy. There's nothing like that going on. And with everything else that we were going through at the time, and as much trauma as she was going through too, and just torture.
Everything that she said.
It was always like that. Not just about this. It was always
you're dumb.
Yeah.
Why would you even think that would work?
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get that idea? That's just a stupid idea. And it wasn't.
No.
None of them were. It just, he didn't think of it.
Right.
So it was automatically, that's a stupid idea. I don't even know how you think. That's not even logical.
And I didn't, you know, as we've all started talking more, I didn't think about this until she said it, that when she used to have friends come over, like our neighbor used to come over and sit down and have coffee. And she said, I wasn't able to just sit there and have a conversation with my friend. He would come in and take over the conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And he had to always insert himself into everything. And and that's because he wanted to know what was being said and to make sure that there was nothing being said that should not have been said. And so that was the way that he controlled everything.
And to be honest, he had to be the one that was noticed.
Yes.
That's why we had to be the best at everything, because we were his girls. So it fell back on him. Mm-hmm. You've done such a great job raising those girls. Mm-hmm. They've done so great. They're such great ball players. You've really done such a great job. Mm-hmm. And it was that whole, I've got to look good. I've got to be the one noticed. Was exactly.
And if you think about how many people that have been empowered that have done sick things like this, you know, it just Epstein is one that comes to mind, you know, because not just because of him, but because of all the people in his circle that were so big, even, you know, world leaders and things like that. But they have to keep up their certain persona, you know, but at the same time, they're sick individuals too.
Right.
And they're no different than what
we
went through.
That you least expect. Mm-hmm.
And that's what they do.
That get by with it. Yes. Because they've built themselves up to be so great that they don't think anyone's going to see anything negative about them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes. And so, and that tends to be what happens until things fall apart and the truth comes out, you know? So, one of the other things that I guess I wanted to bring up too, that is, it's a little more difficult to talk about, but at the same time, I feel like it's something that needs to be talked about, is how all of this has kind of affected our relationships with our spouses. And as far as intimacy and things like that, without going into total detail about anything, but anytime anybody goes through anything traumatic, whether you realize it or not, it is affecting you. And a lot of times, I can say with myself, like I said, I've just started really talking about things over the past maybe 10 years, but I've really gotten into it about 5 years. More so now, I've been opening up more about the past 5 years. But before that, I don't think consciously I thought about, well, this is happening and this is my reaction. And the reason I'm reacting like this is because of what has happened before. I don't think I wanted to acknowledge that part at that time in my mind, because then you really have to, like I've said before, then you really have to acknowledge everything that you've gone through. You have to kind of relive and rehash everything in your mind, because you have to understand why you react that way. And so, like, one of my big issues is I'm a very affectionate person. Like, I just am. I hug, I tell everybody I love them like 1,000 times, you know. And so my husband he didn't grow up in a family like that. You know, he didn't. And over, you know, the years, he tells me he loves me all the time when we get off the phone and everything like that. He kisses me, and which is huge for him because he does not come from a family like that. And anyway, but so if I am in the car and I reach over to grab his hand and he acts like he doesn't want to hold my hand, like, and I'm not trying to put him out there and say that none of this is that it's all his fault. I'm just talking about the reason that I react to things the way that I do. It's not to make him the bad guy or whatever. I'm just talking, you know. Right. So anyway, so if I reach over and, you know, touch his hand and he acts like that bothers him, or if I go to give him a hug or a kiss and he kind of just, and we all do that. We all are tired or something like that and just get aggravated or just even just respond some way. Yes, exactly.
I can understand where it's come from, because I think that you need my spouse and I need yours, because your husband's like me and my husband's like you.
Yes, yes.
But it equals out because I'm not affectionate. Your husband's not affectionate. Mm-hmm. So he needs someone a little bit more affectionate to balance it. And I need someone a little bit more affectionate to balance it. But yeah, yes. I get what you're saying.
And when it comes to intimacy, it's like everybody has their own choice. I'm trying to keep this as...
So if he has a headache, you take it as rejection.
Right. Because I am choosing, like, to do this. I am not being manipulated or told that I have to do this, you know. And so it is a form of rejection for me, and it's a huge deal for me.
It's almost like you've put yourself out there.
Yes.
And it's because you want to do that, mm-hmm. not because you're forced to do that.
Yes. And
if they don't want to, it's almost like you internalize, it must be me.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
They just don't want nothing to do with me.
And like you say, I opened that door. I have been like, okay, you know, I'm reaching out to you. This is kind of where I am right now.
You've made yourself vulnerable, and then you feel rejected.
Yes, absolutely.
And in all honesty, that's not the intention. Mm-hmm. But that's how we internalize it.
Yes.
Because I've put myself out there. I've let my guard down. Mm-hmm. I'm allowing you to come in, and then you've chose to shut the door and not come in.
To be as close as possible in any type of relationship.
Right.
I guess that's the easiest way to put it, the best way to put it. And that is when you're the most vulnerable. And to be rejected at that point, when we were always forced to before, and I'm not being forced to do this now. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing to want to be with you. And you've just been like, I'm sorry. Well, that sorry has just literally broken me for, you know, and they don't realize that. And I'm not saying I'm not saying that mean. I'm just saying because he didn't go through that. And thank goodness he didn't,
Right.
But it's hard to explain to them. And yeah, I mean, they're just like anybody else. They have the, choice.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is. But at the same time, it's just hard to be like, you don't understand how big of a deal that is for me to say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. And then for you to shut that down. And then I just shut down. And then that causes more issues because then it leads to an argument or...
You've put a wall up to keep from being hurt again and rejected again.
Yes. And then he's like, well, I feel really bad and I'm sorry, but, I'm tired or whatever.
I have a headache.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
Men have headaches too.
Yes. Yeah. And they have a reason, but because of the things that have happened, it's hard to kind of separate that and to be okay with that. So that's something that I have had to work with and work on myself. And actually, I've even talked to my therapist about that. And she was like, I definitely see where you're coming from with that. Because it is a form of rejection. And with everything you've gone through, then absolutely, it does hurt. And so it's hard. So that's just one of the things that isn't like an automatic response.
It is.
Because of the things that we've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, fine. I'm choosing like the most intimate of things with you. And you are saying no. And you are absolutely just putting me out of the equation. And so therefore, I'm putting you out of the equation. And we are done.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Like you said, this wall is up. Done.
And then it makes it hard for you to ever try to initiate anything again. Mm-hmm. Because you're like, I'm just not going to, because last time I know how I felt when they didn't want to.
And I think it's different this time because, like we said last week or the last episode or the episode before with our previous husbands, mine did not know anything. I said one thing to him and his response was absolutely horrible. And I never said anything else to him at all. Now, my husband now knows more than, my closest friends besides you.
Right.
And mom knows a lot. But other than that, people don't know as much detail because for one, he's been there and he's just let me talk when things started coming out. And then I started actually talking about things. But he's also the one that comes in when I am yelling out with the nightmares. And so he knows what's going on because he doesn't make me talk. But at the same time, if I do talk, it does seem to help because he just says, that's not anymore. That was a dream. That was a nightmare. It's not happening anymore, and so therefore he knows a lot about everything. And I think that because he does know about the past and about everything I've gone through, that sometimes I hold that against him even more because it's like, you know this. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes.
You know better than to act like that.
Yes.
You know what I've been through and you know how it makes me feel. So you know better than to act like that.
And it's not right. Like it is. I'm not saying that it's right by any means, but that's how I feel, you know? And like you say, when you open up to somebody more, they do know more about you. And then
that makes you more vulnerable the more they know.
does.
And maybe that's why I don't have a lot of people close. I don't like that vulnerability. Mm-hmm. I do not like it. I don't want them to know all that stuff about me because I feel like a lot of times people just want to use that against you. Mm-hmm. They get mad at you. They want to throw stuff up in your face. You did this and you said that. And if I don't have them around me, I don't have to worry about that. And maybe that's not the right attitude to have, but I do.
And I think that that's why, too, that, we didn't talk about things even as we got older and there was no reason that we didn't talk about things. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like I guess in like my circumstance, at work, there was a bunch of us, and, you kind of just get into conversations about things, and, even you get really close to some people and you talk about everything, but that's just not something I still talked about.
Right.
Because like you say, you don't know their response. They might be the very best friend you've ever had. But when you start talking about things like this and the things that you've gone through and the fact that you had to go through it for so many years, and you don't know if they're going to be like, well, you should have done something different. I mean, most of your friends will not do that. But at the same time, there's still that in the back of your mind, well, maybe they think I'm crazy. Like we've said with the whole demonic entity and things like that, not everybody believes in that stuff. And if you say, I was molested for this many years, and so, but there was also another component to it that made it not always my dad or this person. There was something else that happened too, and that would come along and cause situations to happen. Are you going to get the look like you are certifiable? Like you're crazy. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's hard to just put yourself out there too, even to the people that you're the closest to.
Yes, it is.
Because like you said, it makes you more vulnerable to everything.
And a lot of it is still, I think I really do believe that I've gotten past the part of carrying the shame and the guilt. And I think that sometimes that does factor in, because you still sometimes feel a little dirty.
Yes.
And you're like, I don't really want people to see the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
But then we turned around and did a podcast where everybody can hear the dirt.
But that's okay, because evidently this is what God had planned. You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Right. And then another thing, you were finished with that,
yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another thing that that had stood out was the letters and having to follow up on the letters. What would happen is,
and this was something you went through.
I went through.
I did not go through this.
There would be letters written to men, and I would be told about those letters, but I didn't write those letters of the things that I wanted to do with them. And then I would be forced to follow through with those letters, because how would I tell someone I didn't write those letters? A demon wrote those letters. Yeah. So that happened on a few occasions. And then one person that happened with, he wasn't really all there. So it turned into a very ugly situation.
Yeah.
And that one was difficult. Because
he became very attached.
Yes.
Yes.
And I was not interested.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't interested.
Right.
But I couldn't say I didn't write that letter. I didn't even see the letter. I just know what I was told was in the letter.
And then something else that was in your face all the time about that was that you were picked on about this person and how much they liked you and all this other stuff with other people around. Everyone would pick on you about this. Yeah. And like, I just knew that they picked on you. I had no idea that there was any other background with it, And so that was just another way to torture you. Yeah. With that.
And I know they would pick on him and be like, you're an old man. She's too young for you. You're just an old man. And then he would get all, I'm not an old man, and all this other stuff. And they would all be drinking. And then you had this whiny drunk.
Yeah.
And it was just horrible.
And then you were talking about the things like us being pitted against each other. And the one that really has bothered me a lot was the one that you said there was a letter written to him, and then so that letter was sent, like, given to him, and then like you would have to flirt with him or whatever and show him stuff, and that he had told you that he wished that
there wasn't a letter, but I was told that that's the one that I had to get drunk and show stuff to.
Oh, okay.
And then he told me one day that he wished that I was you, or that you were just a little bit older.
And that's something that has really bothered me when you said that, because that's another way to pit us against each other.
Right.
He didn't know that part. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't know that you were going to, the whole circumstances about everything. He had no idea. But this demonic entity did.
He thought that I was just crazy about him and that I was doing all this on my own.
Yes.
And I just was just obsessed with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the case.
Mm-hmm.
But again, how do you say, I only did that because I was forced to do that.
And you weren't allowed to say anything like that.
No. So we were, not only were we made to feel like trash because we were doing something that we were not comfortable with, but then we were made to feel even trashier when it was discussed with us. And
and just kind of beat in all the time, just repetitively, you know? And so, and I didn't know that anything was said to you like that until recently. And I had told you that he and I were, I don't know, I was outside, like when he was washing his car or something. I don't remember exactly. We were outside, and I remember him saying, I wish you were your sister's age. And I didn't know what to say to that, because I was, you know, he was a lot older than me. And I just kind of looked at him and I was like, okay. And then I remember walking off, because I was just like, well, that's kind of inappropriate, you know?
Right.
And so, but I didn't know that the other stuff was said to you until recently. And I have been so upset over that. Like, it really bothers me, because for one, that was said, but for two, that was just something, another dig between us, you know, something else to be like,
well, I would like you if you looked more like your sister.
Yeah, and you already were having issues with me, you know, like, well, I'm doing everything for her, and she's in there just, like you say, acting like a spoiled brat and all this stuff, and now I have somebody says this and this, and I'm like, that's just, it just makes me really, really mad about that.
Right.
And I don't even know, it just, and Mom went through those things too, as far as having to do things with people, to write letters or act like things. And I truly am so, I don't even know if, I mean, I'm thankful that I did not have to go through that part. I really am.
It was just,
but at the same time, it's just so sickening to me to, like, I'm not going to be upset that I didn't go through it, but at the same time, I feel terrible that we all went through a lot of the same things, but there were more things that you all went through that were more traumatic than me. So,
I had very low self-esteem, very low. I was very quiet, very shy. I just had very low self-esteem. And there was one person that I really, really, I mean, I thought that I just loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Just loved him. And I was forced to write a letter to him. And follow through. I knew what the letter said because I was forced to write it. But it was a way to use it against me. See, I told you he didn't care nothing about you. He just wanted what he could get, and that's all he wanted from you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, I was already hurt because, you know, he didn't want me. He wanted some other girl. Right. And I mean, I was young. I was 18 or so.
Mm-hmm.
But you already have that rejection. Then you're forced to write a letter saying, I want to do this with you and I want to do that with you. And then you have someone saying, oh, they just used you. They didn't want nothing from you.
Mm-hmm.
I told you that that's all they wanted from you. I told you. So on my own, I would have never written that letter. On my own, I would have just done my thing. I would have just not said anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have just
let it go.
Yeah, I would have gone on with my heartache and that would have been it. I personally would have never wrote a letter saying I wanted to do anything.
Right.
I would have just let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't an option.
Right.
I want you to see how much he doesn't care about you. I want you to know he doesn't care about you. I want you to see that I'm right, that he cares nothing about you. And then later on in life, I reconnect with this person and I talk to this person only to be told that the reason that he quit talking to me was because my dad threatened to kill him.
I'm not surprised.
So I'm thinking that he totally wants nothing to do with me. He totally doesn't care nothing about me, only to find out that one of the main reasons he quit talking to me is because he wasn't good enough for me.
Right.
He was never going to amount to anything. He wasn't going to go to college. He was, and I think he was still in high school. I graduated before he did. So how do we know he wasn't ever going to amount to anything? How do we know he wasn't going to do anything with his life? He was still a kid himself.
Right.
But it wasn't what he wanted. He didn't want us to care about anyone because we may leave the situation. So it was another way to keep us under the thumb, to manipulate, and to hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, to totally crush your ego to where you feel like you are nothing, you're worthless, without coming out and saying you are nothing, you are worthless. So that he could continue controlling.
And to have anybody else, like in the picture was competition.
It was.
Because it was like if you're paying attention to some other guy, then he would get jealous. Like there was jealousy in that. As sick as that is, that's how it was. That's the truth. So
well, I think we've pretty well covered all that we were planning on covering for tonight. So we'll just wrap it up for tonight, and who knows, we might listen to other podcasts and see that there was something else that we wanted to expand on. But for right now, we just wanted to go more in depth on those things so that people can get an understanding as to why we were manipulated the way we were, why we had so much fear, why the effects are still years later there.
How we respond now, and like you say, and how trauma affects each person differently and how you respond to things.
Right. So, again, you can reach us on our email, which is survivingdarknesspodcast@gmail.com. And we have the website up, so you can just go to survivingdarknesspodcast.com and you can hit whatever link that'll even take you straight to our email. It'll take you to TikTok, Facebook, any of those links. So just get on our email or our website and you can just go wherever you need to go.
And we still have the Facebook page, so if you need to get in touch with us, send an email or to the email address you just said, or you can send us a Facebook message.
Right. And our website will send you to any of them you need to go to or want to go to. So you all have a great week.